You're with Sean Jung and Where the Veil Grows Thin, an exploration of the sacred moments of our human experience in life and death, joy and sorrow, birth and end of life. It's the unscripted instant when the heart opens, the face-to-face moments with the divine.
Hi, this is Sean. Welcome back. I'm here today with Ben again, which I'm really grateful to be here again with Ben. For those of you that are just going to listen to this and not watch it, if you're watching it, you can see him. He's right there. And we're going to talk about some things that he asked me about the last time we were together.
Thank you for having me on again, Sean. And I am always happy to hear new episodes of Where the Veil Grows Thin, and it's even cooler to be able to participate. As you mentioned, one of the things that we discussed and that I thought maybe you would be able to offer some insight, selfishly, I'm asking on my own behalf, but I'm also asking because I'm sure I'm not the only one. Are there lessons from your time doing hospice and doing chaplaincy that you feel apply to just general states of chaos or where people are having existential doubts, even when it's not in a hospice situation, but if the world itself just feels unmanageable and unwieldy because of what's going on and what we're seeing in the news? Are there lessons that you've learned that we can maybe apply to those situations?
So I've thought a lot about this since you mentioned this the last time, and I've actually been sort of looking at some of the trainings from both No One Dies Alone. I do those at the hospital for hospital volunteers so that when we have a patient at the hospital who is dying alone or whose family is exhausted, these volunteers have special training and they come in and they sit with the person. And the hospice volunteer trainings. And it's I don't want to simplify things too much, but it is obvious to me as I'm looking through these things that in the world right now, there is so much chaos. You're right. There's chaos, there's fear, there's violence, there's scarcity. And how we can, as individuals, be in the world and be more grounded and try to be that energy of calm and peace and stillness and not get sucked into the energy of chaos. The energy of chaos is very magnetic for whatever reason. Although when you're with someone who's really calm and really grounded, you want to stay with that person. You want to be in their presence. There's something about that energy that is also attractive. I don't know why it's harder. Maybe there's fewer people that walk through life that way. I don't know what it is, but that's what kept coming up to me was stillness and silence. Was that, not participating in the chaos, even though we're in it, we're in the world. I don't know if I'm making any sense.
You are, but I wonder if you could apply even more the stillness and the separation. There's one thing of like actively removing ourselves from the chaos, but then we are left with the psychological energy that's spinning around thinking about the chaos. And that to me is the secondary place where we're trying to find that stillness. Like we can remove ourselves from the physical chaos, or we can hopefully remove ourselves from the physical chaos. But just the absence of that geography doesn't make the brain quiet necessarily. And so are there practices that people might be able to do to just still themselves or try to still themselves?
I mean, people know this. People know, we've all heard of meditation and yoga, and taking the time to have a practice in your life every day is critical to right now in the world being able to be that peaceful presence in the world. You're absolutely right, Ben. We can remove ourselves. That doesn't make us feel calmer if we're all weed up with that chaotic energy inside of us, but we can step out of the tornado, the eye of the hurricane. But we carry it with us. It's in us. You can feel it. We can vibrationally feel it in our bodies. Having a practice every day. So one of the things, and I don't remember if we talked about this before, but one of the things I always talk to hospice volunteers about, and to the NODA volunteers, the No One Dies Alone volunteers, are that after you have left the person, after you have come home, and this can be a practice before, the practice before you walk into a situation is to take a breath before you ring the doorbell. Take a breath before you enter the threshold of the hospital room. Take one breath. Arrive hydrated. Arrive fed. Arrive not needing to pee. Arrive with no agenda. Being able to, I did a whole training for hospice nurses once on crossing the threshold of the space where they're going to enter, where there's a patient they're going to care for. And how do we cross that threshold? So that preparation of us as individuals before we go into a situation is what we can then carry into the world that is so chaotic right now. And those things are stillness and being grounded and knowing that you're okay. So, there's a really simple meditation and I did this when I was working full time. And then when I stopped working full time and I was just home, I kind of stopped doing it. And I think right now it would be really important to up that practice in my life every morning. Every morning, the first thing I would do is come upstairs where I have privacy and quiet. Nobody was awake. I have a little meditation bench that I sit on that a friend made. I light a candle. I just look at the flame and maybe just breathe and say to myself, and not necessarily out loud, a meditation that I heard on the computer, and I can't remember who it came from, but I've seen it in other places too, about, may I be free from pain. May I be free from worry. May I, experience joy. And I do that saying, may I, and then I will do it saying, may we. So the people and other living things in this house, may this house be that way. And then may this neighborhood be that way. And may the world know this today. That it's a very simple sort of, and you can sort of meditation, you can make it up. What words do you need to be reminded of during the day? And what do you want to ask the universe for? And then maybe 5 minutes. And then I would extinguish the candle and go out into my day. At the end of the day, because I would see so much suffering and so much fear and so much sorrow in my work when I worked in hospice, I would come home and I had a practice when I would pull up to the house, whether I was pulling into a garage or pulling up to a curb, turn off the car, close my eyes, and see all the people I had interactions with that day. See them, hold them up, and then turn them away from me and sort of send them up to the universe and let the universe be responsible for them for the night. I am no longer responsible for them. And then I can come home, I can come into my home, strip my clothes off, take a shower if I need to do that, let the water wash off the energy of things that aren't mine to carry. It's a lot of practicing. It's a lot of practice to rid ourselves of the things that we collect throughout our day that we then unconsciously bring into our home that contaminates it. I can remember waking up in the middle of the night and there were all these people in the bed that I didn't remember bringing home with me, but there they were. And so I needed to know how to do that. And I think all of us can practice that.
It occurs to me that you talked about specifically nurses and crossing the threshold into a room, but that we all cross the threshold when we leave our house and enter the
Yes.
world. And then, as you were just talking about, when we return. So there's each day has the two crossings of the threshold, and each crossing brings with it its own requirements about I'm prepared to step over this threshold and interact with the world and recognize that I may be there to bear witness, to care for the grieving, the hurt, and that there will be the chance that I am going to pick up on some of that energy. And that's very important because you're preparing yourself for that. But I think you've also just really highlighted why it's equally important to be able to recognize that when you cross the threshold back into what is ostensibly your space, that there is routine and mindfulness and practice that needs to go on there. I think you probably should be getting some sort of Nobel Award certification in the mail for the double threshold crossing theory that you have just mentioned
Mm,
here on the podcast.
wow, I appreciate that, Ben.
Yeah,
And learning it the hard way, waking up with all these people in my bed that I didn't remember inviting home. And so I had to learn how to do the double threshold thing, or it was going to kill me. And that's one of the things, and one of the reasons we would hold these sessions for nurses, because they're so vital and critical and precious to a hospice organization, to have nurses that don't burn out after 1 year of doing hospice nursing. And they will, and so will chaplains, and so will social workers, and so will anybody who is exposed every day to that much suffering. You can't do it if you don't have a practice that allows you to rid yourself of the things that are not yours to carry. They are someone else's. And you said something really interesting. You used a phrase, oh, what did you just say? Not holding space,
bearing
but
witness.
bearing witness. So that is such a beautiful thing to remember. We are bearing witness. We
Yeah,
are witness bearers to so much. And you're right. Things can kind of glum onto us that we're not even aware are there. And so having that practice of both holding the people you've been with or the things that you've seen, it doesn't matter. Each one of us, if we leave our homes, and so this is a little rabbit hole. I'm doing this thinking that our homes are our sanctuary. And my home is my sanctuary. It needs to be. We need a place where we can all come at the end of a day and feel safe and loved.
absolutely.
And that's not true for everybody. So, I want to acknowledge that for the people who don't come into a loving, safe environment at the end of the day. And that's a whole nother thing. But I do want to acknowledge that I know that that's not true for everybody. So, but thank God it's true for me that I can come into my home and feel peaceful and loved and protected and safe always. And so that's one reason I would never want to have um, like a little office at home where I actually saw people when I was doing grief counseling one-on-one, that people would come to my home, because that brings in, you're inviting in all of their stuff, and it takes so much energy to then clear all of that out. And so I had an office in town where I met people, and I would leave that office and lock the door at the end of the day and never felt like I had to worry about it. It was just absorbed. So I went down a rabbit hole and I can't remember what I was saying, but it's really important to have this practice. So if we have a practice like that, which is based on asking for what we want, then when we go out into this chaotic world, we are okay. And we can be exposed to so much and not get sucked into the whirlwind of the things that are wrong and scary and frightening about what's happening on the planet right
Thank you for answering this question. I hope that I can come on a future episode and ask another one.
now. You can come on every episode and ask
Okay.
anything you want.
Okay.
This is it's such a beautiful way to be able to talk about some of the things that maybe I haven't written about. A woman texted me this morning and said, please, because in my last episode I mentioned suicide grief from people who complete suicide, the grief that's left behind. And she said, please, please, please do that. Please talk about that. And so I started to write something this morning, and I want to do that. And having a conversation with someone is so much easier, really, than just reading something I've written. So I appreciate you being willing to come and spend this time with me. And I really appreciate you being willing to honor how I want to keep these pretty short. And so maybe this is enough for today.
I think it is. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. This is Sean John. Thank you for joining me where the veil grows thin. I hope that you'll come back, and I hope that between now and then you have peace. Turn off your TV.